Hi everybody. Thank you so much for joining. So, I'm going to be talking about speech language pathology in the US. So, I'm talking to in the Indian SLPs who are in the US, either working currently or pursuing their masters. And I have a lot of questions to ask you. So, just an introduction about myself. I'm Mansa. I'm a speech language pathologist and an artist. And I have a page called the Happy Crisps. And I kind of post about speech therapy and all of that. So, that's where I got a lot of questions about speech therapy, and I thought this would be helpful. So everybody asks me how can I go to the US? How I want to go to the US, I want to work in the US, and I have no idea. So I thought, reaching out to the SLPs in the US who have been through the similar journey, because when I talk to SLPs in the US who have done their bachelor's there, I don't think it's the same as what you all have done. So I thought it would be better to talk to all of you. So just an introduction. I'm talking to Rinki, Sanjana, Yamini, Anushri, and Urvisha. Everybody is in different parts of America, and I think Urvisha is the only student who's still studying, and everybody else has finished studying and is working. I'll have a small introduction, then we'll ask questions about the application process, coursework, employment, and questions which SLPs have asked me, and then we'll move on to the conclusion. So if you all are ready, we can start asking the questions. I think we'll start with the introduction. So Rinki, can you tell me where you did your bachelor's and your master's?
Yeah, so I did my bachelor's at AYJ NIHH Mumbai, which is now Aliya Jung National Institute for Speech and Hearing Disabilities. So Anushri and I are actually batchmates. And I did my bachelor's from 2005 to 2009 in BASLP. And then I completed my master's in communication disorders and sciences from the University of Texas at Dallas from 2009 to 2011. So ever since then, I've worked as a medical SLP in different settings in New York, in Texas, and now in Mississippi. And in my current role, I'm the adult outpatient lead and a clinical instructor at the University of Mississippi Medical Center.
Okay. So let me just jump to Anushri then. Can you tell me about your master's journey?
So just like Rinki said, I did my bachelor's in AYJ and IHH Mumbai, and but just a little different from what Rinki did. I did take a break. I did work in India for a couple of years before I came to the US to do my master's. So I did my master's from MGH Institute of Health Professions in Boston. I did that from 2012 to 2014. And then ever since then, I've worked as a medical SLP, I've worked in a skilled nursing facility, I've worked in schools, and now I'm back into the medical SLP world. And I'm currently working in an acute care setting and an acute rehab hospital. And I'm also a clinical instructor.
Oh, okay. That's great. Okay. So let's go to Sanjana. Can you tell me about your bachelor's and master's?
Hey everyone. I did my bachelor's from Sri Ramachandra University here in Chennai. And I passed out, we did it between 2011 to 2014, Yamini and I, and we are two. So then after my undergrad, I took a year of break. I worked here. I worked in a pediatric occupational therapy setting. And then I went to the US and I did my master's from East Tennessee State University. I graduated from there in 2018. 2 years course, 2016 to 2018. And then I started working ever since. I've been working in a school setting all these years, and I just wanted a change. So I'm going into private practice.
Okay.
All pediatrics, yes.
That's great. That's awesome. And Yamini?
Hi. Yeah, so as Sanjana said, we did our bachelor's together in Ramachandra from 2011 to 2015, actually. And then I took a year off as well, and I did other things unrelated to speech and hearing. And then I came here for my master's. I did that at Purdue University in Indiana. And then since then, I've been working in California. I work as a medical speech pathologist, and I do different settings, acute care, outpatient, and SNFs. I kind of just meander around all three.
Okay, that's great. And Urvisha?
Hi, everyone. After all these strong backgrounds, I'm not even halfway there yet. I did my undergrad from TN Medical College, Mumbai, and I completed it in 2019. I worked for 2 years at a private setup in Mumbai, and then just in fall 21, I flew here in Boston to pursue my MS. I'm doing it from Emerson College.
Okay. So it's good we have a student also, no? So we can get to know the actual experience. All right. So let's start off with the first question, which I get all the time. That is like, do you need a master's from the US to practice there? Or like, can't you work in the US without a bachelor? Like, a person who's just done a bachelor's, can they work in the US? That's the first question I want to ask. Anybody? Sorry, Rinki. Okay. Yeah, Sanjana.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. From what I know, I don't think we can work as a full-time SLP, but you could certainly do an SLPA position with a bachelor's. But certainly with a master's from a different country, you can certainly apply based on your state requirements. Okay. So if you have done only bachelor's, then it might be hard to do work in the US.
Okay, so
and just to clarify, SLPA is SLP assistant, because I know that's not a thing in India. According to me, there's no, at least as a medical SLP, there's nobody who's going to hire you based on a bachelor's. So the master's is the absolute minimum requirement to practice in the United States. I think for maybe 99% of positions as a full-time SLP. And your second question was master's in the US. So again, as a medical SLP, I would say over 90% of positions, the state licensure is going to require you have a master's from the US. And many states require something called CCC SLP, which we can get into a little bit later, because I know that's a question you probably want to ask. But it's going to be really hard, because any clinician who typically calls me is also like, will my Indian master's be enough? And I think in the medical setting, it's not likely going to be valid or recognized.
Okay.
So I can speak to that as well, because my husband is a speech therapist too, and he did his master's, bachelor's and master's in India. So, and he's currently working in the US. So you can, licensure in different states has different requirements, just like Rinki said. I'm currently in California. California is a little bit lenient when it comes to licensure. I mean, not lenient, I would say. It accepts international applicants much more easily than other states do. And they do have a rigorous process to go through. Most SLPs who have done masters in India have to go through like at least two-year prerequisite requirements that they have to show. Like they have to prove your graduate coursework is equivalent and all those kind of things. But I think one thing I've noticed, because there's a lot of Indian SLPs in the US who have done their masters in India. There's like a lot of them here. But yeah, and what I have noticed, which is very interesting, is that AYJ, I believe, still has the option of being able to do a master's in audiology and speech therapy combined. But some colleges in India, like ASHA, you can specialize in either audiology or speech therapy. The problem with that is that if you do masters in audiology, that is not equivalent to a master's in US as an SLP. So I know a couple of people who've done their masters in India in audiology, but cannot work as a speech language pathologist here. So they will be able to use their bachelor's to get their SLPA, the SLP assistant license, and they can practice as a SLPA, as they call them here. But a master's, you can try and get an equivalency for a master's in India to work here in the US.
So you would say like a dual degree or a speech language pathology degree in India you might be slightly better to get a job there. And if I can ask, what does your husband work as? Which setting does he work in?
So he's currently working in the school setting as well. And just like Rinki said, getting into the medical world is a little bit harder if you don't have a master's from the US, because they do expect a lot of experience that we typically get after completing our master's here and our CF here as well. But I don't think it's impossible once if you do start dipping your toe into the medical world, it might be possible over time.
Okay, all right, got it. So that's a question which is out of the way. A lot of people ask me this question. So you would say with a bachelor's, it's really hard. You can't. Most of the time, it's only an SLPA position, right? Okay, all right. So let's start off the questions about the application process. So the first thing is, when did you start planning to go abroad? I'd like to ask Urvisha this question.
So planning was since my first year. I mean, I was like, I knew I wanted to go, but then like actually getting into the process. So I was supposed to start here in fall 2020, that is August 2020. But because of COVID, so 2020 was my goal. So I had started with the entire process of shortlisting, giving my GRE, TOEFL in 2019, around June-ish, yeah, 2019. But then I couldn't, like because of COVID. So I got just one more gap year and then I'm here in 21.
Okay.
So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. So I think people have to start planning pretty early.
At least 1 year. You need 1 year to do your entire process. It's like a multi-step process, it's crazy. It was hard.
Okay, all right. So why did you decide to go abroad and why the US? I'd like to ask Sanjana.
Yes, US, certainly among the countries that I've explored, I had personal reasons too that my parents were willing to let me go only to the US because I had extended family. But other than that, the coursework's been around for a while in the US. And then, I felt like I would get more clinical exposure than what I got in my undergrad from the course that I chose in East Tennessee State. And so that's why I chose US.
Okay. Anushri also, if you'd like to add for this.
Sure. So I actually explored other countries too, like the UK, Australia, Canada. I knew I wanted to come abroad to do my master's, just like Sanjana mentioned, to get a little bit more in-depth knowledge and expertise that we typically don't have the option, especially in AYJ, because it's a dual degree. So you don't get to specialize in speech or audiology. So I did explore other options, but I ended up choosing US. I had tons of family here, so that was an additional motivator. I just felt over time, like with UK, with the way the master's process is over there, it might be a slightly shortened process, if I remember correctly. So which you may not be able to use that degree to move across countries and those kind of things. So I just thought it would be easier with a master's from US. For the future.
All right. Okay, so my next question is there anything a BASLP graduate must do which might, help them make it easier during their application process? Anything like that? So if Rinki can answer this question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think your degree is the main thing, right? Like when you submit an application, you have a statement of purpose, which is an essay. You have letters of recommendation. And your transcript is the main thing that they're going to, you have to see if that's equivalent, because a lot of universities won't even accept your bachelor's degree. At least when I applied, like Purdue, I know Yamini mentioned she's in Purdue. Purdue rejected me flat out, saying that your degree, even though it's a 4-year degree, the 4th year is an internship. So we don't count that as a 4-year qualifying degree. So you can't even apply. So there are basic criteria you need to meet, like all of your degree has to be valid, your transcript has to be in place, GRE requirements, TOEFL and all of that. Beyond that, I think you really need to have a strong why. Like it can't just be, oh, I just want to do MS in US, so I'm just going to apply and see what happens. And I think typically those are the people who get rejected because your application reflects that. Your essay reflects that. And we don't get to interview with these people. So I think all they look at is that essay and those letters. And you really have to sell yourself and make a case about why you should be picked over hundreds of other applicants. So I would just say do a lot of introspection and figure out exactly what kind of program you want, what setting you see yourself in 5 years, why you really want to go, and make sure your application reflects all of that.
Okay, all right.
I'm going to add to that if that's okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So when I applied, actually, we also had not an in-person, but like a video interview. And I applied to Emerson and that, I had an interview with the program director. And for Purdue, I had an interview. And before that, with the application, I had to send them a video of, just a video introducing myself. So I think since Rinki applied, things changed a little bit. And I'm sure it's a little different now that Urvisha has just joined the course. So I think things have gotten more, they want to know you more as a person and not just like a piece of paper. So I think that's something that, you might want to be prepared for. I don't know if Urvisha has something else to add to that.
Yeah, please, Urvisha.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree to that because I had my interview with them, like with the program director and one more professor. And the interview, like they asked me academic related too, but it was so heavily based on like the behavioral interview that we say, like they just wanted to get to know me more.
Okay.
They knew I had experience, but then like, making it really like making your case and saying, how do you relate that and what is your reason with that experience to now apply to your master's, come to a different country. So they really look at all of that.
Okay. Sanjana, you wanted to add something? Yeah.
Yes, and after listening to all these wonderful points, just little things that BSLP students should remember is keeping their clinical hours together, because that is a big part in going into the masters. They will look at your clinical hours, and I guess one of the requirements for the masters that certain universities are keeping is similar to the CCC requirement of you need to have 25 observation hours. Little things like that they will be able to look at from your clinical hours. Other than that, you should also have your coursework information, meaning when we were applying, we were asked to do prerequisite courses for our master's program, which they didn't understand that we already do have like a science background coming into this field. So the one of the requirements was you need to have college level physics course or college level biology course, which they don't understand that we already do. And so having a copy of your coursework is always helpful to, go back and forth and talk to them about it.
Okay, yeah.
Did you guys not have to, like when we applied, at least that was just part of the application package. You had to have your transcripts, which we had to submit our curriculum, which RCI gives you, and that explains what each subject is and describes how it does relate to biology, and acoustics related to physics a little bit, and we had psychology level courses. So I think we had to I had to at least make a case for all of that to prove that I don't need to do the extra prerequisites.
Oh, okay.
Right. When we were applying, we weren't aware of that. And so we had to, we were told to do that again. And so
I did before coming here, I did my physics and chemistry. Like even after explaining it to them, I had got in touch with Rinki to, just tell me what can I do, because I did not want to take all of those courses again. They even had me take stats, but then with a lot of showing and explaining, they waived off stats for me, but I still had to do physics and chem.
Wow,
this is actually a big point. I think this should be a good question, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this is a real challenge and a barrier for a lot of us. So I had to take that 1 year break because I got into a few universities the first year that I applied, but all of them said the same thing, that you don't have the prerequisites. And it's ridiculous because you've done 4 years of coursework just in speech pathology. But I think, so the advice that I think I would give is reach out to the universities a year before you're planning to apply and ask them if they need these prerequisites. So like Rinki said, she got rejected flat out by Purdue. When I applied, it wasn't that. They were much more receptive. I don't know what happened, but I reached out to them. And the second time around is when I applied to Purdue. So Northwestern accepted me, but said I have to do these courseworks. And I was like, I'm not going to spend thousands of rupees on doing this. So I started applying again to university. So some of them do look at your syllabus. And Purdue basically said, oh, if we think you're not going to be able to do it, you can come here, join, and use the first semester to kind of catch up. You might just have to take extra credits. And so I walked in with the same syllabus copy that I sent her over email, put it on her desk, and it took her less than 10 seconds to say, oh, that's good. And I'd been sending her the same email the whole time. So I would definitely say reach out to them, make sure you're bugging them, because this is one of the biggest barriers that Sanjana and I had. So yeah.
Can I add one more thing just to wrap this up? Because even when I was applying, I applied to UT Austin and UT Dallas, which are both the same university system, University of Texas. Everybody says yes first. They approve you, they encourage you to apply. A lot of them, if they look at certain prerequisites in your scores and everything, you're a shoo-in. And all of these points come in a lot later, after you've invested a few months in corresponding, getting your transcripts converted. So UT Austin gets back to me after months of telling me what a great candidate I am. Again, saying the 4th year will not be valid. And UT Dallas, because that was my first choice. Like Yamini said, I kept persevering and just sending them one email and after another, essentially bugging them to convince them that this shouldn't be a barrier why I'm not selected. So I think one of the things that, again, it's not going to be a walk-in with each university, but I think if you really make your case and really use the power of communication to convince them why you deserve this and why you are a good candidate after meeting the other requirements, don't just take it at face value that they need certain things. I think you can really bypass that and make a case for yourself, because we're way more qualified than the American applicants because we have dedicated bachelors in SLP.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Sanjana, did you want to add something?
Sorry, I find it hard to mute and unmute myself. I was just going to say 100%. I agree with Rinki that we're really qualified and we have to advocate for ourselves. And little things like, just stick to your emails. Don't think, I'll email once a week. Just be on it and get to it. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, that's pretty interesting that, because we have a bachelor's in speech and hearing, I thought we would be the obvious candidate, but what you say makes sense. You need to advocate for yourself, tell them why you're important. Okay. All right. So the next question is so you all mentioned you had to write a GRE or TOEFL. So can you tell me a little bit about that? You have to write both the exams and about the minimum scores. I think Urvisha wrote it just now, so maybe we could ask her.
Yes. So in 2019, I had to take my GRE and my TOEFL. TOEFL is by default. You have to take an English-speaking test. Some universities do, they are okay with IELTS also, like IELTS, but most in US, TOEFL is a good test. And GRE has now been waived off because of COVID, at least in Emerson and across a lot of universities that I've heard from my friends. Not all, but quite a few. So if somebody's applying now, they should definitely look up if GRE is still a requirement. If it's waived off, good for them. Lucky they don't have to take that exam.
All right. So all of you have taken the GRE and TOEFL then. All right. Okay. So, that we'll just move on to the next question then, because everybody asks about that. And I think many of them were confused if IELTS is more than enough, but now that we know. The next
GRE takes a few months to prepare because it's really just math and English, which obviously a lot of us probably haven't done maths in years, right?
Yes.
At least for me, it was really hard because it has nothing to do with speech pathology. So make sure you account for that time. It just won't happen in a week or two. You really need to sit down and study for a month or 2 months. Yeah.
And just one more point, that GRE definitely score above 300, 305, but also remember that this does not carry the entire weightage. They'll really look at your entire profile, your essays, your letter of recommendations, and a part of it is your GRE score. So it's not the whole deal, it's a part of the deal.
Okay, all right.
But in my experience, though, you must meet their minimum criteria to get through. You absolutely have to. Yes, it has different weightage, but you have to meet their minimum criteria.
All right. Okay. So the next question is about the application process, but I think we covered a bit of that. So all of you have to apply to different universities, and how long does it take? It depends, right? So they may email you right away, or it may take some time. So I think it's a different timeline. So my next question would be, did you apply to multiple colleges? I think I'll ask Yamini this question, if you applied to multiple colleges.
Yeah, and just to add to the previous question, I think some universities have a direct application and some have through a portal called CSDCAS. So I know I got super confused about that. So so you just kind of put in all your documents into that portal and then apply to different colleges. So I kind of decided to narrow down my search to only universities that are within that portal, so that it's not expensive, it's not extra work. And a lot of universities, I believe, do it through CSDCS. So just to add to the previous point, and then I did apply to multiple universities. I went in, which is the focus of this. These are the only universities I'm going to apply to, and this is what I want. So the first year around, I got into all the universities I applied to, but again, the prerequisite thing happened. So the next year, I applied only to Purdue and Emerson because they were more willing to not waive off, but more receptive to the idea of, okay, you could probably come here and do the prerequisites. So I would say either there's a two-pronged approach, right? You're super hyper-focused on these are the only universities I want to get into because this caters to everything that I need. And if you don't get in, you don't get in and be okay with that. Or kind of create a list of top universities, mid, and and when I say low, it doesn't mean low, but it's just their acceptance rate is higher, or they have a larger class, or so those kinds of things. Or it's a state university, they're a little bit more lenient, I guess, or they have a higher acceptance rate. So I would create that kind of list and maybe put 3 in each and apply to that. So it just depends on what you want. If you just want to come to the US and you're sure about it, versus I am wanting to get only into these universities. Yeah.
So each application costs, like, you have to pay for it, right? To apply for each thing. Yeah. I think that's why people might,
Yeah, some colleges require you to do both. Like you apply directly also, and also apply through the portal, which Yamini mentioned, the CST-CAS. So you have to pay the fee twice. You need to pay the college application fee and the SITCAS fee.
Okay, all right.
And sometimes you'll have a grad school application, which is separate. So you have to do the grad application, and then you have to go into your specific department, and then you have to do another application.
Okay.
It really depends on the university that you're applying to.
All right.
And just to add to, I was going to add something and I lost it. I lost my thought. It's fine. I'll add to it later.
You need cognitive therapy. That's what you need.
We're all SLPs here.
Hey, I'm in a holiday. I don't need therapy, please. I'm relaxing.
So my next question is, anything to keep in mind while applying to the US? I think there's so many things that pop up, but anything in particular, Sanjana, you'd like to add?
Well, I would just say, consider universities that maybe your previous, seniors have applied to as well. Sometimes there is more acceptance through those universities because they know what kind of students your undergrad university brings in. So there is like a reputation that you build up, a quality that you build up. Okay. So that could always, increase your acceptance rate. Other than that, like Rinki said, statement of purpose is another big thing. Just be honest, just put yourself out there and be more clear. I also think English proficiency is a big thing. You have to be fluent in your communication. So they'll look for that as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it on top of my head. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this actually I thought was a very irrelevant point when I was applying, but it is what I realized after I did my application. You need to really see the number of credits that you need to complete, like when you're shortlisting your universities. I mean, I know friends that are doing like 65 credits, and it's just hard. It makes your coursework and your entire semester really hard. Mine is a 54 credit program, so I mean, it's comparatively easier, but it still gets really hectic. So just check the number of credits that you need to take.
I would say you'll get fine. Oh, sorry, Anushree, you go ahead.
No, that's okay. No, I was just going to add to Rosha's point. So actually, my university that I graduated from, I needed 75 credits to graduate. So that was a very intense program.
Oh, wow.
It was, and on top of that, I ended up doing a thesis as well. So it was incredibly hard. But I would say that don't let that deter you, because it is doable. I mean, yes, it is going to be hectic, but the whole sole purpose of you being here in the US or coming to pursue your master's is your goal. So if you want to learn as much as you can, and if that program is a really good fit for you, if you look at everything else that it offers, don't let that deter you, is what I just wanted to add.
So just a minute, you get credits by taking classes. I don't really know how this works, credits.
Oh, I can add to that. So credits is basically you do coursework, and every coursework, depending on how long or how intense that coursework is, there are certain credits associated to that. So typically, like a coursework for dysphagia, for example, like it was a semester-long course that I had to take, was a 3-credit course. But as opposed to a tricks and vent class that I had to take, it was an elective that it was not mandatory for me to do. That was a 1-credit course. So it kind of depends on the coursework that the course that is.
Okay. Rinki?
I was just going to add two things. I think one is finances, which is really important because certain private universities can cost upwards of $50,000 up to $75,000, I've heard. And you can do the conversions. And then the public universities, which can also be in your top 10, 20 universities in the country, but they're just public, they can cost a lot lesser, like $30,000 to $40,000. You also want to see which universities might be more likely to give you scholarships and assistantships. Like finances were an important decision for me, because again, you're taking a loan. You want to make sure, if those criteria don't meet, there's no point even applying if you can't afford to stay in a city or pay the fee. And the second thing is curriculum, which I think is not given enough importance as well. So again, for me, I know for Anushree, we absolutely knew we want to be medical SLPs. There was no way around it. There was no compromise involved. So you want to look at the curriculum online for each university and see what kind of city it is. So like a Dallas, Houston, Boston, they have medical hubs and they have connections with a lot of hospitals. So we knew our placements are more likely to be adult medical, which is what we wanted. Whereas if you end up in a smaller city or like a university town, you may not get those kinds of medical experiences. Look at the labs, look at the research they are doing, see if that aligns with your interests. So I think it takes a lot of time to shortlist exactly what you're interested in and then apply based on all of these criteria. Don't just go for what are the top 10, because I get that question, ma'am, what are the top 10 universities? Let me know, I'll apply. Because top 10 for me may not be top 10 for Sanjana, may not be top 10 for Yamini. So just make sure you're investing in your future and taking the time to work this out before applying.
Okay.
I just wanted to add on to Rinki's point. I 100% completely agree to what she shared, because that was a huge decision for me when I was applying. I knew I wanted to really specialize in voice disorders, which is, again, not a very common thing that you see even in universities across the US. So for me, I really had to go into every single university, their coursework and their kind of research that they have. Do they even have a voice lab? Do they even are they even doing the research which I'm going to find interesting? And that was like a major part and a major deciding factor for me when I was trying to apply. So definitely go into the coursework, do as much research as you can about that university and about what your interests are and whether they align with what the university is offering you as well.
Correct. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think that's important. So my next question would be, if you need a help of an agency, anybody can answer this, because I don't know if any of you have taken the help of an agency. So
I can start. You don't need an agency, but you can if you really because the process is long and it's kind of complex. So, but I did not take one because I felt no counselor knew about our course. So it was pointless for me going there and I was telling them what to do. So what's the whole point of me paying you and telling you what to do? So then you just need to, I figured it out on my own. So I think you can figure it out.
All right. And did any of you take the help of an agency? Yeah. Okay.
I did, only for the financial portion of it. So this could be helpful to anybody else. So it's not like all of our parents have this lucrative cash lying in the banks that we could just show our, finances. Yeah, we're ready to go to the US. Yeah. But there are some consultancies that actually help you rotate that money and give you like a statement or whatever that you need for your visa process, or for some universities as well. So that's the only part that I had to do or get some help with. But as Urvisha mentioned, we can really do it by ourselves. And there's literally no consultancy that I know of in Chennai that could actually help me apply. And it was all by ourselves. Hopefully after this video and in this interview, it helps some of our, juniors.
Yeah, I hope so too. So next question is about the visa. So like you said, the agency helped you with that, but can you tell me how long did it take, and a little bit about the process, because I have no idea about this. I don't know what question to ask as well.
Okay, I can go ahead and start. Visa, it's going to be your one lifelong thing. If you decide to come to the US, you are going to be battling with it throughout your time in the US. It's a never-ending process, I would say that. But it starts at your master's. You do apply. You do go into the US portal, embassy portal, and then you create an account. You do your DS-160 form. It is an application form for the visa. And then you open up slots and you try to book whatever is available. Then you go attend the interview. They would ask some generic questions as to, what university you're going to, why you're going. They would ask you for your finances, etc. And any documents supporting why you're going to the US, basically. And they just want to know if you're going there for studying and not for any other purpose. And so they would do that. And once the interview is done, just by the end of the interview, you would know whether you're given a visa or not. And then you would collect your passport at least after 2 weeks.
Okay, all right.
Approximately. And so that is a very brief overview of the process. And anybody else, please feel free to add.
I was going to give a more bigger picture view. Is basically you come here as a student on an F1 visa, super easy to get, very misleading because that's how you think the rest of your life will be, and it will not. Because literally when someone calls me, I tell them, if you're not familiar with the visa process, just know what you're getting into if you're born in India or China. Because the way they give out work visas here is dependent on which country you're born in.
Okay.
So if anybody happened to be born in Dubai or somewhere else, because I have friends who that happened to, you lucked out. But if you're born in India, so you come here, you get an F1 visa, then you get something called OPT, optional practical training, which you can work on for 1 year after graduation.
Okay.
And then the only way to work in this country is on an H-1B visa. That's basically, it's an intent to work in this country and it's employer sponsored. So you can't just wake up and walk in and say, I want this visa. You have to find an employer to sponsor this visa for you. And only 80 or 85,000, I don't exactly remember the number, are given out every year. And it's a lottery system, or it has been for the past many years. So basically, you can do everything right. You can find an employer, you can put in your application in time, and you still may not get the visa. So I've had friends who've had to leave, or there are some other alternatives to continue to stay in the country. For the most part, if you're lucky, it will work out. And then you stay on that H-1B visa for anywhere between, I would say, 6 years to 20 years. And then that eventually converts into a green card. So there's like a lot of steps. Just be aware that it won't just be a cakewalk, because you have to not only convince someone to hire you, you have to convince them to spend extra time and get a lawyer and get a company to support that visa process. Just reach out to your seniors, like any one of us. And there's a lot of resources online about H-1B visa, but just be aware of all of this before applying.
Okay. And it's not that easy for this to get converted to a green card. It's not like, okay, 4 or 5 years and then nothing like that, right?
No. And I'm sure other people have, you can jump in as well. I'll let someone else jump in.
I think Anushri might be able to answer it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have had my fair share of visa issues over the years, I would say. And Rinki is very familiar with all of those because, we have each other's shoulders to cry on in those situations, fortunately. But, just like Rinki mentioned, there is one visa that, the H-1B visa that you can go through the lottery. It's like 85,000, just like she said. I think 65,000 of those visas are, open to everyone, but the remaining 20,000 are dedicated for people who have a master's degree. So for people who do pursue masters, which for most part in our field, it's a minimum, it's a minimum requirement we do, the 20,000, we tend to get 2 chances in the lottery. So it's twice the luck, I would say, but it sounds great, but it's not really that great. So you do get an option when they do the first lottery in the 65,000, you get 1 chance. And if you don't, then you go into the 20,000 and you get another chance. Everything else, your application looks great. Everything is good. Your employer is interested. That still won't translate into you getting a visa even after that. And unfortunately, I was one of those people. So, there is another option called the non-profit H-1B visa, which I had for multiple years. So what that means is any non-profit company that is a non-profit agency, but also has an educational affiliation, can apply for an H-1B, the same visa, without being in the lottery. So you don't have to be bound to those 85,000 applications. You can, and the other part the good part about the nonprofit H-1B is that you can apply anytime during the year, because the 85,000, the lottery system happens only in April. So whatever happens, you have to have a job willing to sponsor you before March, of every year. So God forbid you miss that date, you're in a pickle, basically. But being in a nonprofit H-1B, you can apply anytime during the year, and there is no restriction as to how many visas can be doled out to these nonprofit hospitals or companies. Now, the only problem is that, because it is like that, they are a lot more stringent in terms of their application process and their approval process as well. It's not as easy. So that's the only thing. And every single time, unfortunately, if you decide to move or change jobs, you have to go through the transfer process. And you don't have to go through the lottery again, but it's still, you have to go through the process every single time. So it is something everyone should consider or think about, or at least be mentally prepared to deal with once you decide to pursue a master's here.
Okay, all right. I think that's pretty comprehensive, and I hope it gives everybody an idea. So we'll move on to the coursework or the university work. So I just wanted to know if the course which all of you have done is called a MS in Speech Language Pathology, or I don't know what exactly it's called. Yamini? Or
I just didn't want to interrupt anyone. So I think broadly it's MS or MA. There are some liberal arts colleges as well, and that's fine. As long as they're ASHA accredited, you're fine. And then some of them are called speech language pathology. I got a speech language and hearing sciences degree, and a lot of them are communication sciences and disorders. I think Emerson is communication sciences and disorders. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, it doesn't. Okay. Yeah, CSD. It doesn't really matter because nobody's looking at that, like the credential, like you have an MS versus an MA. Nobody looks at that. Everybody looks for if that's from an ASHA certified or registered university.
Okay, so the next question is about how the clinical postings are like. So I think Anushri is supervising a few students, and I think you can talk about it, and maybe Urvisha can add on.
So I think we covered that a little bit earlier, depending on the college or the university that you choose to go to, and, the place that you're in, if it's a bigger city, you tend to have more options in terms of medical based clinical externships is what they call. The college that I went to, MGH, I had clinical postings almost every single semester. So starting from first semester, the first 2 semesters, it was clinical internship where we basically work with clients in the clinic that was owned by the hospital. Okay. Starting third semester, that was the summer semester, summer, fall, spring, summer. So I had 4 other semesters where I had clinical externships, where I was placed at different postings, different settings. I had an early intervention that is, any kids from 0 to 3 years of age. I had a posting related to that. Most states have a mandatory requirement to have a school-based posting as well. So I had one of those, and then I had 2 in a voice clinic because that was going to be my super specialization when I did my master's. So depending on that, it depends on the university that you go to, but I think that's pretty comprehensive in most universities.
All right. So and my next question was if you take students or patients independently when you're a MSc student. So you do? Yeah. Urvisha?
Yes and no. You take it independently, but you are under supervision. Like you will discuss your treatment plans and everything with your supervisor.
Okay, all right. The subjects, so just about the subjects, I think it depends, right? You can choose what you want to take, or you'll have a basic speech language pathology subject. Is that how it goes?
You don't get to choose all the subjects. You do have some electives. Yeah, and they are like 1 credit, as Anushri had mentioned earlier. Like there's you take it over. Like I had a winter intersession and I had another summer intersession. So that is the only elective. Otherwise, all subjects are speech language pathology.
Oh, I was just going to explain how ASHA accreditation works. It's very different from India, where each state has its own curriculum, and then RCI kind of dictates a curriculum, but it's not mandatory to follow. Yeah. Like we had MUHS, which was Maharashtra University of Health Sciences, had its own curriculum. When you're ASHA accredited, which is over 200 colleges, everybody has to follow the same basic core curriculum. which includes a lot of stuff that's going to be a repeat of what you've done, like intro to speech and intro to communication disorders. You will have basics in adult neuro, basics in fluency. And in each, you have to do all of that. And then in each semester, you get the option to take electives. And then you can kind of decide how you want to tailor your program to your interest, whether you want to take electives or not. The core curriculum will look the same across the country. And then how you choose to specialize and enhance your learning will differ.
Okay, all right.
Yes, my answer was very similar to that. My university had its core curriculum already set, and I got to choose an elective per semester, depending on the availability of those electives. So I had to take 4 credits in my spring semester. One of it was optional as to whether I can take that or not, but I had to take the 3 other mandatory courses. So very similar to what she said.
Okay, all right, all right. The one more question which I had is if you have to do a research work for credits, because if you do a dissertation for masters, right? So is it compulsory or mandatory? I remember Anushri mentioning about her that she did a dissertation.
So I think most universities give you the option to do that. It's not mandatory like it is in India. It's an option where you can choose to write a comprehensive, at least that's what it was when I graduated. You do the comps, like the comprehensive exams. But the other option is you can choose to not do those and instead do a master's thesis, which I chose to do. So it's not mandatory. It's your choice.
Yes,
I did the comps and it was crazy. It was almost like a board exam for your speech pathology. But yeah, comps exam is one of the options that we have.
Okay, all right.
I'll just add one more thing. You give an exam called the PRAXIS, which you have to give to get your CCC SLP, your Certificate of Clinical Competence.
Okay.
Which I thought, because I did the comps and most of us choose to give the PRAXIS in the next month or 2 months, you've just studied the whole portion. So it's a lot easier to give the PRAXIS. Whereas I think if you haven't done that and now you've started working and you've started your fellowship, it's hard to get back to what you've learned in school and study everything. Obviously, Anushri did it, but I think the comms helped me with the PRAXIS. So just something to keep in mind if you're choosing one or the other.
I gave my PRAXIS. I gave my PRAXIS pretty much before I even graduated. So around the same time people were doing their comms exams, I kind of was studying for my PRAXIS anyway. So I think, as long as, just like Rinki said, as long as you give your PRAXIS when everything is fresh in your mind, it's much easier to do that. But yeah.
Okay, so let's just cover the PRAXIS question right here. It is compulsory to give a PRAXIS so that you get your CCC to work, right? Correct.
Yes.
And the PRAXIS is like an MCQ exam. Yes. Okay.
It was when I gave it. I think I've heard a lot of changes have happened since then, so I'm not sure.
Purvisha's going to find out.
I've heard about it still being the MCQ. They didn't mention anything. At least not that I am aware of.
Yeah, my student just took it, so it's just pretty much MCQs. I think coming from India, what we've been through in our test-taking capacity, I think people freak out so much about PRAXIS, and I was like, oh my god, this exam was pretty easy. I don't know. I didn't see the whole hype around it, because again, I think we have so much experience with exams in general. We've studied our whole lives. I think generally most of us are very good test takers compared to some of my American colleagues.
Okay, so the stereotype that Indians are good at exams, it kind of holds true.
I think so. I personally think so.
Okay, all right. So, okay, the last question in this coursework thing is if there's any scholarship, which, if anybody's aware of it during the coursework, if there's any scholarships you can apply to, which could reduce the financial burden or something.
I can talk about that. So as far as I know, most colleges, if not all, automatically consider every application for all available scholarships that the college has. At least that's what happened with Be It Emerson. There is a merit-based and there's a need-based scholarship. And if you don't just get it in, you don't automatically get an email from there, and you can definitely reach out, request, put your case forward, then why you need that, show your academics, and then that's what I did. And so I was able to get a merit-based scholarship there.
Okay, all right.
So
did any of you also get a scholarship? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, Rinki, Sanjana, yeah. And you can start off.
this was 2009, so things might have changed. It wasn't a given that you're going to get a scholarship, but I applied to 8 schools. I got into all 8 of them, and I emailed them back saying I cannot join if I don't have financial assistance. So automatically 3 of them were out because they said we're not considering that. And again, it was the time of recession, 2008, 2009. So that may have had a lot to do with it, possibly. So that made my choice easier. But then after that, I really, I feel like I really had to make a case on email after email, asking about assistantships, which is a job on campus, asking if I can work in some lab, asking about in-state tuition. So UT Dallas and Emerson actually gave me in-state tuition, which saves you half the amount. So in-state tuition means instead of $9,000 per semester at the time, I was paying $4,500 per semester. So it basically cut my entire training in half, and I paid what an American would pay, not what an international student would pay. So please ask about those options. And then when I came on campus, I basically was that annoying person who went to every lab owner and just said, can you give me an assistantship? And most of them, they know you're international. So it was pretty easy to get one after coming here. And then I was able to get that as well. So I think you really, again, have to just take the extra initiative and go above and beyond to ask about these things, because it wasn't a given at my time.
Sanjana?
My experience was very similar to yours, Rinki, because I had to come to the grad school office and then reach out to people and ask. So the way I got my graduate assistantship was through the international office. So the kind of assistantship that I was offered was an on-campus job as a graduate student. So I would work for a graduate school manager, and same thing. They would waive my fee and change it to intuition. On top of that, they covered my whole fee, and they were able to also give me a stipend because it's a graduate assistantship and I was working there. So I got paid. So all of this was possible only because I went and nagged all of my people around there in the office. And I'm like, is there a position? Is there a position? Walk in with your resume and advocate for yourself. You're basically selling yourself out. But, the advantage is that I basically did my college for free. I didn't have to pay a penny, and on top of it, I got paid for it.
So assistantship is like this kind of like a part-time job, but you work in the university itself. What exactly was your role?
My role was as a graduate assistant, I had to do some contracts in the graduate office. So I was working for the manager, kind of a desk job. But there are teaching assistantships as well, where you take up some work from your professors, and you work on their presentations and whatnot, clinical work as well. So the one that I did was more of a desk job, a clerical job.
Okay, all right.
I'll quickly add to that. Yes. So some universities are like you have to go there and you have to apply. So you can apply to the labs. Purdue was very competitive because most of the grad students are from Purdue. They did their bachelor's in Purdue as well. So they kind of continue working for the lab and get that assistantship. And my cohort was pretty tiny. It was like just 20 of us. So it's very, very competitive. So I would definitely, like, if financially you have to have an assistantship, I would, like everyone was saying, just make sure that's a complete out for you then, if that's not going to work out, if you don't get an assistantship. There are other options on ASHA's website for international students. There are some, it's not like, it's the scholarship, like we say in India. It's a set amount that you get that you can use either to pay your fee, or you can use it as you wish. There's some that are just for international students, some for minority students. I applied to some within Indiana State. So once I went there, I applied to Lions Club and I got some funding for my research that I used to go to ASHA. So you can do that. And then you have other roles as well. Like I ended up working in a cafe. So those are ways that you obviously do not have enough to pay for your tuition, but you have enough to live off of, like to pay, maybe not even rent, but sometimes you can pay rent and then for your food and groceries. I also did a little bit of tutoring. So that was enough to cover my living expenses. So for at least a few semesters before I got more major funding to cover my tuition. So there are other options as well, but they might not have the same amount of weight, like to cover your entire tuition.
All right.
I'll just quickly add to that. So I was not fortunate enough to get any scholarships because MGH is, again, very competitive. school, and they had only it was a class of 60, but they had only 3 scholarships available, and it was very competitive to get those scholarships. In terms of assistantships, again, similarly, very limited opportunities for 60. There were only opportunities for 6 graduate assistantships. Okay. So I was not fortunate enough to get that. But just like Yamini mentioned, I did have an opportunity to work on campus. And luckily for me, the on-campus job that I had paid way more than the assistantship did. So I was able to do that. But, I just wanted to let students know, you do get options to get scholarships back in India as well. So I had applied for something called the Tata Scholarship that was available. You had to go through an interview. Again, it was just as rigorous application process as getting into a university. But they were incredibly helpful. So the first part that I did end up getting was their max loan amount that they could afford, award to a student. I ended up getting that, which is again 0% interest rates, and you get 7 years after graduation to pay it off. So again, you get a lot of leeway with that, because again, 0% interest rate is basically you can take as long as you can to, you can procrastinate and pay off. But in addition to that, what was really cool about the Tata Scholarship was based on my first semester, my scores, I would say, or my marks in, I reapplied for another scholarship, and based on that, I got the similar equivalent amount of money, but that was not a loan. It was a scholarship that I ended up getting, which was again a huge help for me to pay off, my tuition and help me with that. So I would definitely encourage a lot of students back in India to look at those opportunities, not just in US, but in India as well. We do have some options like that.
Yeah. So actually, I applied for Tata Scholarship. I did my master's right here, and I got back, like, based on the scores, 50% or more of so my one semester fees is like 80,000. And so 2 semesters together was, 1,60,000. So I got back 80,000 for the first year. So Tata Scholarship, I didn't know it works for even people who are abroad. That's great. Okay.
There is also a KC Mahindra scholarship, which is also like Tata, and like it's an Indian scholarship, so you can students can apply for that too.
Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much. So we'll just move on to the work part. So first question is, how easy is it to get a job after master's? Rinki?
As a medical SLP, I can only speak as a medical SLP. It's really hard. It's very competitive. Because again, I think you're not just applying for an already very competitive position. You're also trying to convince an employer to eventually down the road sponsor a visa. I wouldn't say get into a job and don't discuss that, because I think you're going to be in a tough situation 6 months down the line when now that hasn't been discussed. And I know students who've done that, and then the employer says no. So then you have to scramble to find another job. But again, like anything else, at least for me in master's, I was told you're never going to get a medical SLP position. Don't even bother. Just get into the schools and then you can figure your way out. And I wouldn't suggest that for anyone, because I think a hospital is not going to hire you if you don't have experience. And at least like with Anushree and me, we knew we needed to end up in a hospital. You get 90 days on something called an EAD. You get 90 days after you apply, after graduation, to find a job. That's another thing. Otherwise, you have to leave the country. So you have kind of a time pressure to find a position. And I think you just have to apply every single day. Identify which setting you want to be in, or if you're open to more than one city or state, and just apply. Like hundreds of applications, go in, do the interview process, and just hope something will work out in those 90. Once you get your H-1B, it's a lot easier. I think my transfers, like each time I moved to a new city or state, was fairly easy, because at that point I had 4 years of acute care experience. My visa was done once, so people are more likely to do it again. Then it becomes a lot easier. But I would say the first job was very hard for me. And Anushree might have something to add to that.
I knew I wanted to be in the medical world. I had opportunities to work in the schools, but I was so gung-ho on making sure I ended up in the medical setting that I held out on those jobs. I did end up taking a job in a skilled nursing facility, and I think it's not the most ideal setting that people would want to work in. Some people love working there. I don't want to be disrespectful to those people, but for the most part, who want to work in the hospital setting, skilled nursing is not the most desirable place to be. But, it's a good place to dip your toes in, get into the medical world, start getting that experience, start building onto it. And then, as you get more experience, again, just like Rinki mentioned, it gets easier and easier to hopefully transfer your visas into different settings that are more, likely to that you like.
So all of you got a job within the 90 days period? Sanjana, Yamini, all of you. Okay.
Yes, my experience was a little bit different. I went into the schools. So I was contracted by a contracting company that would place me in different school districts. So like Rinki said, H1B process, right after my graduation, I went through the process. I got my H1 pick and I started working with it. In the schools, there's definitely a lot of need. There's a huge need. So there'll always be a position available for you.
Okay.
But it's not a direct hire. You'll have to be contracting. And if you do want to be a direct employee, then the same thing, you would have to go through the visa. And schools pretty much do the nonprofit visa. And so in my experience and what I hear, that's pretty much a smooth process because it's education. There's not a lot of scrutiny there. And so that's been my experience.
I just want to speak to that though. When you work in a school district, because I did for 3 years, and I know so many people who wanted to get hired directly by the school district, and it's not easy to get an H1B sponsored by the school district. Some do, but it's not that common because when you get employed by a school district, you're a state employee. So there are a lot more layers that they have to go through to get that H1B, that approval to sponsor your H1B. So I just would say that keep that in mind. There is a good chance you may have to be contracted. If that's the place you want to be, then there's a good chance you may end up being contracted for a long time until you either get a green card or convince your school district to sponsor your H1B.
All right. So you basically like another bunch of a company which helps you to get a school job. Okay. All right.
In the medical setting, you have companies that will hire you and they do your visa, and it actually works out better because then you can move around within the company, between states, between settings, but you're still hired by that parent company that's done your visa. Okay. So it's a lot easier if it's a legit, trustworthy company to do that, rather than each time you move, you have to get the direct employer to do it for you.
Got it. Okay. Sanjana?
I was just going to say that was my experience. I moved from California to Texas right now, and it was the same company that was easily able to place me, and all that was needed was just an amendment paperwork. It's very easy that way.
So universities have placements, or you have to look for jobs yourself?
No, universities will not have. I mean, universities have job positions, but you're most likely not a candidate for it because it'll be a clinical supervisor and you have no experience getting right out of grad school.
Okay.
So you'll have to do most of your hunting by yourself. It helps when you have for me, the last 6 months were externships. And it helps when you form some bonds there where, you're talking to the person that you're training with. I moved from Indiana to New Jersey and New York, and I did my externships there. So it helps when you start making connections. And then consultancy companies are just easier because they know the H1, like everything that Rinki and Sanjana and Anushri were saying. Each of these, I just wanted to mention, is a rabbit hole. So your application or H1. So there's multiple layers to it that we cannot possibly cover in an hour. So I would suggest the students just reach out to people in whichever process you're in. Like Urvisha probably will be in the process of applying to jobs in a year. And so, you apply because there's just so much you can cover, right? Like every time someone says something, I'm like, oh, this is also another option. So yeah, so the hunt, just to summarize that, is on you completely. And because you have that extra additional visa thing that you have to sort out, you might have to just look at consultancy places and not be direct hires to the school district or the hospital right out of grad school.
I just also wanted to mention real quick that, in addition to having the visa requirement, we also have to complete a 9-month clinical fellowship before we get to a CCC clinical competence certificate from ASHA. So I just wanted to mention that as well.
SLP, right? Yeah,
there's a clinical fellowship. So for any students, who graduate, regardless of whether you're an international student or an American, student who's born and raised here, you have to complete 9 months of clinical fellowship after you graduate. So before you can apply for your permanent state license or your ASHA CCCs. Basically, what that means is you are under a supervision of a clinical, like a CF supervisor. Okay. So it's not as stringent as being as having a clinical posting in grad school. They expect you to be a lot more independent and eventually be independent enough to handle everything on your own. But depending on the setting that you're in, there might be some situations where your your CF supervisor has to sign off on some documents, like your evaluations or co-sign some of the notes, again, depending on the setting or the state and the requirements that they have. But you do have to go through a 9-month clinical fellowship. And it doesn't matter that you have studied in the US. Like my husband, he did his master's in India, was working in India for years before he came here. He still had to, once he applied, he still had to go through a 9-month of clinical fellowship before he could apply for his Cs. So I just want to...
the CF can be in any job which you choose or only in certain positions?
No, the CF can be in any position, absolutely, that you want to work in. So the thing that adds another, but that one thing that adds another layer is like if there is a requirement, let's say in a hospital that wants to hire you, but if they don't have someone to supervise you and be your CF supervisor, then that becomes a barrier for you to get that job. So that just adds another layer when you're trying to apply for jobs right out of grad school.
You need to find a place which you want, plus has a CF supervisor for the first 9 months. Okay, all right, got it.
I just want to quickly clarify something for people coming from India directly for their masters. So the CF that you do is on your way to get your triple Cs, but technically you don't need your triple Cs to work in a lot of states. You just need a state license, but a lot of hospital-based jobs at least require you to have the triple C. So it is not a mandate. It is definitely not a mandate. You need to have a state license, which is why you have to send your paperwork to the state. That's your main thing. So I would not that you shouldn't get your triple Cs, or I think everyone should end up getting, because that just expands your job opportunities. But like when you're coming into the country directly after you haven't done your master's in the US, I would apply to the state. Because you want to get a state license to practice, which is mandatory versus an ASHA triple C.
Okay.
I just want to say, but I know I can speak to the state of California. The state of California still requires you to have a 9 months of what they call RPE, something professional experience. I forgot what the full form is.
Required professional experience.
Required professional experience, yeah. So you still have to do 9 months of RPE, which is very similar to 9 months of clinical fellowship to get your Cs. So even though you're coming from India after doing your master's in India, and you're coming here, you still are required to do those 9 months of RPE, which I think most states have that as a requirement. So, you can do it at the same time you're doing your CF, because they're two different things, just like Kamini mentioned. One is a state licensure, one is related to ASHA. So the 9 months of RPE, like in the state of California, and the 9 months of clinical fellowship that you need for your ASHA, you can do it together, which most of us end up doing that. But if you choose not to do your Cs, you will still have to do your 9 months of RPE in most states to get your state licensure.
Okay. So the CCC is given by ASHA. Yes. Okay.
So the ASHA gives you CCC. It's going to be, I think, at least in the medical world, it's every state I've worked in, you cannot even get through the door without having that in New York, Texas, and Mississippi that I'm aware of. And another thing about the CCC is ASHA has a mutual treaty with many countries around the world. So if you have an ASHA certified MS, CCC, SLP, it's a lot easier. I have friends who got jobs in UK. The licensure process in the UK was a lot easier. Canada, Australia, Ireland, there's like 7 or 8 countries that ASHA has mutual agreements with, including working in India. I also know a lot of SLPs from Mumbai recently. They have basically, if one of us go back, we would have a CCC SLP, right? So a lot of Indian clinicians are basically working under such a person who's come back from the US, working for 9 months and giving the PRAXIS exam while being in India. and they're getting CCC SLP, that tag in India, I think that's okay. You're getting an ASHA 9-month certification. They're doing clinical fellowships in India under a CCC SLP. But please know that it doesn't mean any, I mean, it means something. It just means that you worked under a person who has their Cs for 9 months, because it's really a job requirement in the US. And I'm seeing that, I'm hearing that that's being misused a little bit to say, I'm an ASHA certified professional, so I deserve a certain salary, but you've still done the same masters in an SRC or an ASHA or an AYJ. So I don't know, I would just be careful about those things ethically, because you haven't technically done the coursework here, you haven't worked here, you've done the same job you would do, except it's under somebody who has their C's. So I'm just seeing that being exploited a little bit. So I just wanted to share that.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, Sanjana.
Yeah.
Just to add, having a CCC also helps with transfers between states. So I was working in California and now I'm in Texas. So it was relatively easier just because I had my Cs. I could do a small application and then I got my Texas state license to work in. So it is an added thing to have in your toolbox. But again, like Yamini said, I do think it's not absolutely mandatory, at least in the school settings. You could still go by with a state licensure. And just to add to your previous question before the CF topic was how to look for jobs, right? I was part of the student organization body called the NESLA, or the National Student Speech Language and Hearing Association. So I was able to do a lot of philanthropic activities and was able to connect with my seniors through that. And what we did as a NESLA, I guess, Tennessee chapter was we would invite a lot of people to come and talk. We would invite certain companies to come in and have like a campus interview. So being part of those student bodies will really give you opportunities to meet such people and, look for positions and job opportunities. I also got a chance to go and attend an ASHA convention when I was in grad school. When you go to conventions, you have a special section for jobs and, job offers that you could go and explore and just literally hand out your resume and they'll be in touch with you. That's how I got my first job. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one of the options.
Okay. So let me just ask this also. So if you have to become an ASHA member, is it compulsory? No? Not necessarily. I mean, I would recommend students to be a part of like the student body and then become a part of ASHA membership, because you do gain a lot from having ASHA membership. You will have access to your practice portal. You'll have access to so many other things, like you could purchase like a CE credit management system. I've seen that,
those kinds of things. And you have so much research coming out, so you still have access to all of that being a member. So I would highly recommend.
Okay, so you attend the webinars or conventions if you're an ASHA member?
You can. We always get a certain amount of discount because we are members. And if you're non-member, you have a separate price to attend ASHA conventions. Those kinds of little perks.
Yes. Similar to the ISHA thing, I think. Yeah.
But if you have your Cs, you have to by default be an ASHA member. So if you have a CCC SLP, to keep up with that certificate of clinical competence, we pay something called dues, which you're paying like an annual fee to ASHA, and it gives you access to all the journals for free more than anything. You have access to all the research. And I would say for anybody wanting to go up the leadership ladder and do things, get more involved with their state and national association, get involved with education, research, leadership within ASHA, trying to make a difference more broadly in the professions, that would kind of be a route, because to serve on a committee, you would kind of need to be an ASHA member, and, to do some kinds of research projects, clinical research projects within ASHA, you need to be a member. So it has a lot of benefits. And again, if you have your Cs, by default, you have to pay to keep up the Cs.
So you pay every year to maintain your ASHA membership. And do you have to I think there's something like, is it CEs you need to take up every year, like certain course credits or something?
30 hours of education in a 3-year period. So it's not impossible to it's basically 10 hours a year, or however you spread it out, but you need 30 hours of professional development.
Okay, very good. I've heard a lot about burnout from SLPs on Instagram, mostly US SLPs. So have any of you faced it, or do you want to talk about the work culture of burnout? Anybody?
I'll start.
Yeah.
Well, I think that like anybody can go through burnout at any point in time. But I do think this is my 2 cents about working in the US is you have a good work-life balance.
Okay.
And you can get burned out. Like I work 12 days in a row. Like Sanjana knows this. I do, because I am the primary SLP for my hospital, and a lot of people have kids. And so, they always call me to get coverage. So I work 12 days in a row, and I do 10-hour days sometimes.
Okay.
So I do tend to get burned out in the sense you get tired after working 12 days in a stretch. So I, but it's also easy to kind of tell, at least in my world, it's easy for me to tell someone that, hey, I am burned out, and have those open conversations.
Okay.
It's not expected that I work those 12 days. So it's very easy. So it's not, I don't want to scare anyone by saying this is the expectation. And I think one of the other things, my personal opinion is, if you like what you're doing, the chances that you get burned out are far lesser, because you're interested and you're passionate in what you're doing. So if I'm working with I do extra hours because I have a student or CF with me. And so I have to sit down with him or her and talk to them, after work. I'm passionate about that. So if I do those 10-hour days and I come back home really tired, I feel like it's fine. And having that work-life balance also. So that's my 2 cents about it, and everyone might have a different opinion.
Anybody else wants to add on to this? Yes, Sanjana, please go ahead.
I was just going to add about my school life. That is definitely a different kind of burnout, because it all depends on your caseload and how you're managing it. It's not always the kind of caseload that you would expect. It's not that dream 50 students caseload. It's always huge, and there are kids moving in and out throughout the year, so you have more kids at the beginning of the school year, and as the school year goes by, some of them drop, some of them don't, and so in schools it is manageable in the sense you do see a lot of vacation days. But Yamini knows this, and we constantly talk about it. I bring home a lot of work, so I have to sit and do my reports, and so she really questions how much of a balance that is. And so, and to speak to what she said, it is at the end of the day about what you like to do, right? So if you are in a situation where you are able to advocate, you have to advocate. You have to talk to your supervisor about, hey, I'm not able to do so much. You need to, look at my caseload. Please try to limit my caseload. Really advocating for yourself is the key. I did not know that. I did not do that in my CF year. And that was huge reasons for my burnout. But as I was getting into the field, and now that I know better, I absolutely tell them, hey, this is the limit. You need to stop sending me more students. And again, at the end of the day, it's going to affect your therapy. You're not going to give quality service. That's the most important thing.
Yes, that's important. Anybody else wants to add on? Yes,
I just wanted to, pile on to what Yamini and Sanjana said. I think the key thing about working in the US is is that everyone is very mindful of their work-life balance, and they want most supervisors want that for you as well. So if you do advocate and you let them know that I am feeling burnt out, I'm just getting to a point where I'm going to break down, or you don't even have to go there. Even if the fact that you've worked 5 days in a row or 6 days and you've done 2 weekends in a row, the third weekend you can definitely say, I've done my fair share, I am really tired, and they are going to take that into account, and they're going to understand that, which I felt, having worked in India and here, I feel like that was a huge, change that I had noticed, because in India it's like, oh, that's your job. You have to do it no matter what happens. But here they're a lot more open, even for vacation days. Like, you say, oh, my family is coming and visiting me. I need time off. Okay, let's see how we can make that work. So they're a lot more open to making that happen.
Okay, that's great. When you talk about work-life balance, today is a Sunday and I've got 3 calls. I work in a clinic, so I've got 3 or 4 calls from patients, even though they know the clinic is closed on a Sunday. They call me at 7:30 a.m. when I'm snoring. So I really am, I'm jealous of your work-life balance a little bit.
I think that's what, when somebody tells me, why do you love, what is the difference between US and India, more than the education opportunities, all of that, for me, it is the work culture, which is why I would advocate for somebody to stand up for those things even back home, because I don't think we talk about it enough. I think the expectation is, oh my God, I have a job. I have to work Monday to Saturday. I have to work at nights. I can't, just all of those things, and the hierarchical system, the lack of awareness about speech pathology, the value, the income we get here versus there. I think those are things that unless enough people don't talk about those issues, it'll never change, right? Even for SLPs back home. And what I do love about working here is the expectation is that you're going to work 40 hours a week, 8 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever you choose. Beyond that, in the medical setting, occasionally you'll have weekends. But beyond that, whatever you do is you going above and beyond for most jobs across the United States, across industries. You can do as little as you want and just be like, my job is my paycheck. That's all I'm going to do, and clock off and forget about it. Or if, depending on how involved you want to be, you can be like Yamini, where you want to put in the extra hours. You can be like some of us, where we volunteer with state associations, with ASHA. You can be doing education research clinics outside of that requirement. But they are very, very supportive about mental health, personal time, resources to combat burnout. So I do love that about the culture here, is it's very understanding of those issues.
Okay, that's actually great. Anybody else want to add on to what you love about working in the US? Yeah, actually, we haven't spoken to Urvisha in a while. We'll all be talking about
No, because it's all like, I think it's better that they talk. No, but I just wanted to talk about the grad school burnout. I mean, that's a different kind of burnout. But I think it's more because it's all new to you. You're studying, you're working, you're making your food, you're cleaning, you're doing everything together. So it's just new to you. But I mean, at least at Emerson, they have been super, super receptive, like about everything, and super considerate about everything. For example, like I just had to ask, because I wanted to visit India in December. I reached out to my professors, and because we have our last finals in the second week of December, and I said that I really need to fly earlier because I don't get enough time otherwise. They adjusted all the final exams just for me. Like, you can take it later, you can do it via Zoom. And I was like, I can't even imagine somebody doing that if I were in India right now.
Impossible.
So that was too good. So it was, I mean, I can totally agree and like see how this continues even after grad school. So I'm just happy about that.
That's awesome. I really wish we spoke a bit more about burnout in India, because it's not easy, right? Like doing bachelor's only, I'm sure like people who are watching this like later might be doing just their bachelor's, but it's a pretty hard journey, just jumping into it, handling clinics and college, but nobody really cares. There's nobody who's there to support you or understand that you're stressed. I think that's great that people are talking about that in the US. So I was just asking, what do you love about your job, or what do you love about working in the US? Anybody else?
I think the biggest boon, I think, for me is to fall back onto my lovely colleagues, my wonderful SLPs, my best friend here as well. Any day, any bad day, I just give her a call and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is how my day was. And have that little venting session, have a glass of wine and be like, okay, here's what happened. And then and she takes her turn. It's really good to have friends in your own field you can fall back on. So I really love that and enjoy working. I'm personally very pediatric, so I'm biased. I love working in the schools and with just pediatric population. You're like the best thing for them. You walk into your classroom and they go like, oh, Miss Wee, you look so pretty today. And I'm like, oh, thank you. I don't get such compliments at home, so thank you. It's really nice, little perks. It makes your day.
Yes, I think that's awesome. Yamini, do you want to add about why you love working in the US?
Yeah, I think, I would love working anywhere as long as it's medical speech pathology. But I think US specifically, you have a lot of scope for growth. And I think that's another thing in India, that the adult speech pathology world is still kind of growing. And like here you have opportunities, like where I work, I set up my FEAST program. So we do the endoscopy, the fiber optic endoscopy studies by yourself. And California requirements are different, state requirements are different, but here, you're on your own and you can scope the patient. So it just gives you, if you have the drive, whether it's pediatrics or adults, if you have the drive, you have a lot of scope for growth. And like my boss is pretty receptive. Yes, funding and all of that, like any other place, nobody's going to just give you X amount of money to do whatever you want. You have to like fight for it, but everyone wants you to grow. Everyone's supportive. This is, again, I don't want to comment about India in general, but I do feel like there's less politics involved at work here. Again, I'm not commenting about every work situation there, but like everyone wants to be supportive of you and your growth, and nobody's trying to pull you down. And that's been my experience. So yeah, scope for growth. And good, like Sanjana was saying, I think, friends that you carry from home, like Sanjana and I have been friends for years, and people you meet here as well, like, SLP colleagues. I think in general, the SLP world, all of us are just such compassionate people. And so having that to fall back on has been also great.
That's awesome. Actually, I think SLPs are very compassionate and they get along very well with each other. I've not had any issues. Anybody who I reach out to is so supportive. And I reached out to the 5 of you and all 5 of you said yes. So that was awesome. So Anushri, can you tell me what do you love about working in the US?
So I think everyone like Sanjana, Rinki and Yamini have kind of shared similar things, similar experiences that I've had. And speaking to what Yamini would say, I'm a very passionate medical SLP, which is a little bit harder kind of journey in India. Although I don't want to say they're not opportunities, there definitely are, but just not enough. Yeah, just not enough as you see that here. And everyone is really supportive. They're very appreciative of your work. Like just the other day, it was a long day. I just recently switched jobs and I started working in a acute rehab hospital. And it's ever since I started, it didn't matter. Like day 1, day 2, I had a full caseload and I was like thrown into it, expected to work long. Well, not expected, but, working long hours and those kind of things. And just a couple of days, I want to say a couple of weeks ago, they have these point system that they employ at the hospital. I literally got like a big Precedence Award point system saying like, your work is so appreciated. Thank you for putting in the long hours.
Aww.
I know they're appreciative. I know when they do say like, thank you for working or whatever, but the fact that these tiny little things, they don't really, in the big picture, don't really matter much, but to you, they do matter a lot, just a good reminder that, even if you're putting in the extra hours, people are noticing that and they are really appreciative of those, the extra time that you put in. So I really like that about the work here.
That's really nice. Like people are appreciative. That's what you kind of need, that little boost to go on, right? That's awesome. So I think we've covered most of the questions in the employment thing also. Just another question which I wanted to ask was, so these are questions a few students have asked me, the median salary of SLPs. So if anybody can just tell me about that. So I think it's different for school SLPs and med SLPs. I'm not really sure about this. So yeah.
I would defer this to the ASHA website. They have, and I think Rinki and Anushri might know this as well, is they have like state-wise, they have median salary. So I would just defer it to that. I don't have numbers to throw out or belt out right now. Or maybe
I think numbers like you can expect $60,000 a year upward. The most is in the medical setting, 90 to 100,000. That's very upper limit based on the levels you're at. Certain hospitals will have levels that you have to go through. But another thing to know, at least again in the medical setting, is a lot of companies will hire you for an hourly position. So like on paper, if salaries are 70K or 80K, I'm just giving a number. You could actually end up making like $40,000 that year, which was surprising for us because we didn't, at least for me, I didn't know that's how things work. And you see that paycheck and it's not what was promised because you get paid by the hour for the number of patients you see. And with adults and elderly patients, that they could have surgeries, they have other diseases. There's a lot that dictates your caseload. But if you're salaried by a university or a hospital, then you get paid irrespective, but then it'll be closer to the amount you sign your contract for. And every state is different because the standard of living in each state is different. So Yamini made that point, you want to like defer to that. And then a lot of places are also open to negotiation. So they might look at you and offer you a number based on, they'll try to lowball you and then you kind of have to negotiate, like which I'm sure is true in India as well.
Yes, Sanjana.
And with contracting, it's not like in one setting that you just get paid higher than the other. And I understand there may be a general trend, but I do know that in schools, if you go with a contracting company, that has a relatively higher pay because, like, I think one of them mentioned that, you know, if you were if you were a district employee as a direct hire, then there's a lot more benefits that need to be provided, as opposed to contractors. They don't really need it, but then they get paid upfront a lot more. So those are little things. Again, do your research, advocate for yourself, and get that. First.
Okay, that makes sense. So I think the ASHA website has this. I remember this now. And another thing is, do you think student loans can be paid back pretty soon? This was another question. So I think a few of you studied free of, like, because of scholarships, or, you know, I forgot what you call the other thing, something. I forgot.
Graduate assistantships.
Yeah, assistantships. Yeah. So I think that helped you pay it back. But anything else you want to add on for this question? Yeah, Anushree, please.
Yeah, so I did not have any scholarships. I went to an extremely expensive program that had a lot of requirements. So my tuition for 2 years was $75,000. That was just the tuition amount. And obviously, you know, when you go to India, I had some help from Tata and all those kind of things that helped with that. But for the most part, it was a significant loan amount that I had to, you know, pay off as I started working, and it was doable. I mean, I was able to pay it off within, I want to say, 6 years of working. So it is doable. And now, of course, I'm talking about a university that's probably one of the most expensive universities. So if you are anywhere below that, I'm sure it's going to be a lot easier for you to pay it off as well.
Okay. And can I add one point about the loan? Because I think so a lot of people end up getting loans in India, which have upwards of 6-7%, I think, interest rate. If you have a family, not even a family member, I don't recall, because I have my mama here. It doesn't have to be a direct family member. If you have a person willing to co-sign your loan, I was able to get a student loan from an American bank. So the interest rate was 3%. So you save a lot of money. And they pay your whole tuition. It's a loan, but you get 15 years to pay it off after the day you get your first job.
Okay.
So I don't know the stipulation of loan amounts, but I would imagine this is a much better offer, or much easier to pay off and a much lower interest rate, as long as you have an American citizen who's willing to co-sign the loan. So I would encourage students to pursue that if you have someone.
Okay. Another thing is your fee structure for your grad program. So I think Anushree mentioned hers was around $75,000. Anybody else wants to tell about their grad program fee structure? Sanjana?
So
yeah, okay.
I can, my fee, so it's per credit. You are charged per credit. So because it's 54, my fee is around $55,000, $54,000.
It's per credit. So okay.
Yeah, that's why I said it's important to see your credits, because it also becomes active. Plus you pay more. You need to pay for the number of credits.
Oh yeah. So Anushree has 75 credits. So around, got it. So another question which I get is, what other courses can you do in the US after a BSc, BASLP degree in India?
Yeah, I mean, I have some of our mutual people who were in our cohort in India. So it really depends. If you don't want to be a speech pathologist, then in the US, I feel like there's a lot more flexibility versus in India, where in India, you do speech pathology, you cannot move on to some other field. It's really hard. But in the US, it's just you take some credits. I have people who don't even have a graduate high school degree who are speech pathologists, because they went into community colleges straight out of 10th grade. So it's so much more flexible. So I know I have friends who are doing neuroscience now, people who do linguistics, phonetics is still kind of in the realm of speech pathology or within our world. Psychology.
Would do like an MS degree or something like that.
Yeah. I know friends who are doing masters hoping to go into a PhD. So you have a lot more flexibility. So if you choose and you want to do interior design, I'm sure there's a way you can take up courses for
Okay.
interior designing and you can do it.
That's
So
interesting. Okay. So I'll just add one thing. I recently learned that you can do an MSc in linguistics, neuroscience, cognitive science, psychology in India after doing a BASLP degree. I didn't know this. I recently learned this. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Rinki?
Oh, I was just gonna add because I recently got this question and I was like chuckling a little bit because I was explaining the process to this girl and she's like, but like Rinki, I lost 2 years. Like then, I think the thinking in India is you have to at age 16, you do this,
Yes.
at age 21, you do this, at age 24.
One after the other.
She's like, they won't accept me, right? Because I'm 28 now and other people will be 26. I'm like, no, I had a 90-year-old in my linguistics class. I'm not even kidding. The good thing, it has its pros and cons, but the good thing about this country is at any point in your lifetime, if you want to pursue a career, be it medicine or law or psychology or SLP, you can go back to school at any time. And there are ways to do it. Also, another thing to know is BASLP is not a course here. It's not a requirement to have before you do a master's in speech. So your colleagues and classmates will typically not even have a speech background. You're all starting off at the same training level, which is why you have more of an edge because we have BASLPs, but they could have done law, they could have done something completely different, been in special ed and then come to this program, and you can always switch into any career. So it's very flexible.
Oh, so my next question is related to this. So after a BSc degree, there's nothing like you can do a PG, like, so this is common. PG diplomas in certain fields like, AVT or dysphagia, you have a fellowship or something for a year. So PG diplomas would last for a year or lesser. So you have those in India. Is there something like that in specific SLP fields in the US? I get this question and I'm really not sure. So
yeah, I don't think you can work. This is my understanding is I don't think you can work as a speech pathologist unless you have a master's, unless you have the state license. You do have specialized courses. Like I was looking for something with voice where it's for the singing voice, and people who are singers, speech pathologists take it. And it's an intensive 2-week course, but that does not allow you to practice as a speech pathologist. It's just like an add-on. It's like, extra. I think one of the questions that you had also sent to us was, what are the courses you can take for dysphagia? Or, so you have all of these extra courses that you can take. That does not make you a speech pathologist, but it gives you more boost, more like for your practice or look good on your resume to apply for jobs. So you have different treatment, like you have LSVT, which is for Parkinson's, or you have Speak Out, you have MDTP, which is McNeil dysphagia. And, so you have various, and like for pediatrics, you have the prompt and you have so many that you can add on, but you need your basic master's degree to practice as a speech pathologist.
Yes, this should be the bottom line. This is a very important thing. So everybody should get to know that a master's is kind of like a baseline for you to work and for you to do anything else. To become a SLP, you don't need a dysphagia certification or anything, right? Not anything like that. It would be an add-on, but
nothing called a dysphagia certification. So, and this question comes a lot because I have a lot of people who call me. They say, I just want to do dysphagia. That's not a job over here because any place you're hired, it's very rare that you'll get a job in a purely swallow clinic. There are voice and swallow clinics, but you're going to have to also treat aphasia, cognition, voice. So you can take electives in your master's program that allow you to do more SLP or dysphagia focused coursework. And then you can take all these courses that Yamini mentioned. You can have a lot of additional continuing education that will be self-initiated and mostly self-sponsored that you can keep taking, but nobody's going to most likely pay you extra for it. It's not like it's mandated to get a dysphagia specific position. It's just lifelong learning that you're keeping up with because you want to do better for your patients.
All right.
Sometimes actually companies do pay for your CE courses. Also, sometimes like Rinki said, it's on your own, but companies, like my company has X amount of hours that they pay. And if I want to go beyond that, that's on me. But, they have some. So that's what it goes back to, that whole talk about why do you like working in the US is because you have potential for growth that people are willing to sponsor. People say, here, I'm giving you this amount that you can use. So that's an option.
They invest on their employees. So like my company provides like certain amount of money for my professional ed, something like that. They invest in their employees.
Okay, so have any of you done an extra certification? Like I know of Prompt, Flow Time, Hanan, and a lot of them. So have any of you done an extra certification or something?
I know Rinki and I both have what we call a certified brain injury specialist certification that we both did.
Urvisha, yeah.
Yeah, so Emerson, like they were sponsored by Speak Out, and all of us students in the current cohort were able to do a Speak Out certification for free. Like we didn't have to pay.
That's actually great, because I know when you convert it to Indian rupees, it's so expensive. If I wanted to get any one certification done, most of it is US based, right? So it's really expensive for me to get it done. Sanjana, yeah.
I got my PECS level 1 training as a school SLP because I had need for some of my students. So PECS level 1 is what I've done.
Okay, that's great.
And as SLPs, most of us have additional training in fees using MBS, like doing video fluoroscopic studies, and then a bunch of, MDTP, LSVT, MBS IMP. There's just lots of these certificate programs. I kind of was steering away from using the word certification because all they are is it's a training you attended.
Yeah.
Like CBIS is a little bit more involved, as an exam involved, but really they're just to use a device called Vital Stim. You attend a 2-day course, you do a certification. Again, I think that word is being exploited a lot by businesses to make money and exploit clinicians. So at the end of the day, it's a training that you're doing to get a certificate. And then how you use that with your patients will depend on your setting. But there are close to 50 that are available. And we just launched a website called medslpcertification.com. It's free. It's a free resource page. So if anybody is interested, they can read more about the ones that are at least SLP specific.
Okay, that's actually great, because I think, like you mentioned, training would be what it's better called. So I know a lot of SLPs in India also tell that I'm certified in this, I'm certified in that, but it's basically a few weeks program, right? Where you learn something more. That's all it is. And I don't know. Anyway, moving on to the next, it's a few questions just remaining. So one thing is, do you know about how to do a PhD in the US? Just a small brief about it, if anybody could give me. I don't know who would
I can quickly talk about it's the application process should probably be the same as masters. And I think that if you're coming from India, I think they would expect you to have a master's, is my understanding. But I think here people jump straight from a bachelor's into an intensive PhD program. And the application process will be the same as a master's. So you'll have your statement of purpose. And you might have to have, I don't think might, I think it'll be strongly recommended or encouraged that you have a thesis that you've done at some point. You have research background. Yeah, I think everything else should be the same.
Yeah.
And in PhD here, I think it's the same in India, but here it would be like a funded position. Most of them are funded. And if they're not, then I think then it's not a very lucrative deal. But they'll be funded in the sense that your tuition is mostly paid for and you get a minimum stipend that you can live off of. Like you can manage, you might not be saving a lot, but it's still a salary.
All right. So does your accent or fluency affect your work or your grad program? So I know proficiency in English is something which is kind of important, but is it like that important that you might not get selected for a university or a job?
I don't think so. I mean, I was here and this was just an experience. The first client that I took, it was online. And to be very honest, I had a tough time understanding the client, like just because of the accent and probably because it was online, like, and plus it was like a very, very new, like getting used to the accent of Americans around me plus the client. But it just took one session to get over it and like start figuring out from the next. So it wasn't like a big deal. But yeah, that's it. I don't think otherwise it makes a difference.
Urvisha, it's probably because in addition to having an American accent, they had a Bostonian accent, which is a lot harder to understand. And it took me 2 years to get used to it.
Okay. So you would say your accent, your fluency, it's just slightly important, not like it overweighs everything else, right? Okay, fine.
I think one little thing with Sanjana, I was just going to say Sanjana, because she's a school SLP, I think it changes a little bit there because you are teaching articulation to kids, so she can speak a little bit more about it. But I also, when I came into grad school, this was an additional thing. I had a professor check off on my like there was, forgot what it was. It was for
dialect,
all the students.
No, it's accent introduction therapy. That's
I didn't have therapy for it, but I just had like someone check off like, okay, I understand your accent. It was done for all the students. I wasn't singled out. but just making sure that you have. And when I did school placements, unfortunately, I had to do that. Not to be disrespectful to school SLP, but like the kids are better off without me. But I personally went and I spoke to my professor saying, hey, you know, I might not be able to pick out on certain articulatory patterns. So can you kind of walk me through that? I don't think it's hard necessarily, and Sanjana can probably add to that a little bit.
Thank you. Yeah. It's not necessarily, I guess, a deal breaker, but if you do, and if you're able to identify those little, I guess, dialectical differences within our languages, and you're able to change that itself is a big plus. And you know, in schools, it's mostly like, yes, you're working on articulation, but you also can use other means to support your child. There's always these conversations about SLPs, especially Indian SLPs, working on these artic sounds that some parents might disagree with. And they're like, hey, you know, you're not able to pronounce it right. How do you expect my child to? But that does not say that, you know, your SLP is not qualified. And that's not what ASHA stands for either. You know, we're qualified enough to model sounds and not necessarily a human model. We could use, you know, support systems like our programs and the devices, placement cards, phonetic placement, everything else. You could still teach them. But at the end of the day, it does help when you have a more of an edge and fluency when you're communicating with your parents, when you're communicating with your team members. It really helps. So it's not like a deal breaker, but it helps.
It helps. Okay. Another question is, so like, how is the support of other professionals in your job? So I know that in India, people don't know what we do. I'm assuming it's a little better over there, or maybe majorly different. So yeah, support of other professionals. Sanjana?
I would like to add that one of my closest friends is an OT. They are really amazing. You work, at least in the schools, I work hand in hand with my school sites, my OTs, my team, my teachers, all of them. You have to kind of depend on them, right? It's not that each client or a student does not just get exclusive only speech services. While some do, you mostly have kiddos who get more than one service. And so you can only see a problem through one lens. If you have your peers, you can certainly see it in all other aspects as well. And that really helps, especially for, some of our clients who have sensory needs, right? I don't understand that world, and my OT friend gives me that view and supports to help my students. So it's always beneficial, and they're very kind, they're very friendly. There's no ego, there's none of that. It's really nice. I'm grateful for my friends in other fields.
That's great. Yeah, Anushree, please.
I just wanted to add that in the medical, when I worked in the schools, it was really like everyone knew who was speech therapists, what the speech therapist did. And it was like amazing for me to be in that position, because it's hard, in other fields, they don't really understand what speech therapy does. But in a school, it's a lot more friendly. But at the same time, working in a hospital, like talking about supportive professionals and collaborative work, it's so important. It happens very easily as well. Like just the other day, I really currently have a patient who has aphasia, and pretty significant aphasia, nonverbal, and he has impaired comprehension along with impaired verbal expression. So I had OTs and PTs come up to me and ask me for like any strategies that they can use in their therapy in terms of to help the patient as well, and any suggestions I can give them to help them with their own therapy sessions. So it's always like an ongoing discussion. There is so many means. It's not just about email or calling. There's not always very formal means. They always like stop by, like knock on the door and like, oh, hey, I just wanted to ask you about this patient. What do you think about this? Or if someone that they have and they are noticing some deficits that somehow got missed in, when they got transferred to the hospital or something like that. And they would be like, hey, I have a patient who I'm sure might have some cognitive deficits. Would you like to take a look at that? So it's a very open, collaborative dialogue. And I think it's even more so, and Yamini might be able to speak to that even more so in an acute care hospital where, doctors, case managers, OTs, PTs, nurses, CNAs, they all work so hand in hand with each other. It's really an amazing environment to work in.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is just a general thing is our field is, but if we just stand alone by ourselves, we're not going to get anywhere. We have to work a lot with PTs, OTs, ENTs. I work with lymphedema therapists because I work with a lot of head and neck cancer patients. So, and even taking back home to India, like this time when I went back, I spoke to some students from Ramachandra and I told them that don't just think that you're a standalone profession. Go out there and start making networking with people who are not SLPs. I think it'll just help us grow as a profession because we're still a relatively young profession, right? We still are not, so many SLPs around the world. And it's really important for us to grow and foster those relationships with other professions so that we can kind of create a learning environment and help the patient the most. So acute care is great if you're trying to collab. Like I collab with the ENTs a lot and bug them if I see something on like a fees and I'm like, I don't know what, I like post it on like various Facebook forums as well. One that I think Rinki kind of initiated that she went above and beyond and did. So again, we need to kind of take that step and do that. But people are always going to help, and your ENTs, if you form a relationship with them, I bug him and like 2 hours later he'll call me and he'll be like, hey, this is what I think it is. So it's a fun learning environment.
Okay, that's actually great. The last question I have is a small piece of advice for aspiring SLPs. That's the last question. Anybody?
Aspiring SLPs, please, we said this earlier, but know your why. I think you need to know why you want to be in a certain country, why you want to be in a certain setting. You don't have to have all the answers, but I think just doing some reflection and introspection will help you in your journey. One more point is, I don't think a US tag makes you a better SLP. You have people who can go to ASHA and AYJ and excel and be leaders in their field, and you can have someone in the US who's a terrible clinician because they haven't put in the work to actually provide good care to their patients and go back and not make a difference. So I think it really comes down to the person and the individual. You're not a better SLP being in one country or another, one program or another. The only advantage that I have found in the US is I think growth is what Yamini has mentioned again and again, is you beyond your clinical work, you can, I've been involved with ASHA leadership, state association leadership, making apps, running websites. Like there's so much you can do because you're at the forefront of your profession. You're at the forefront of evidence-based practice. You're in a country where interprofessional collaboration is a given. You don't have to fight for those things. So if you have the skill set, the sky is the limit. So that would kind of be my takeaway for today.
That's awesome. Anybody else wants to add any advice you would like to give? Something which you missed out on or something? And Sanjana?
After hearing Rinki's, I just really cannot follow up with anything.
Yeah, I think she gave a comprehensive thing.
Yes, that was amazing, actually. My 2 cents would be, I think as a younger clinician, when I was applying for the US, I was agitated at every little thing because just have some grace, give yourself some grace, because this process is not like a one-day thing. Don't stress yourself out. Please find strength in your peers, connect with each other when you're applying, because there may be something that, you're not saying that the other person is. So connecting and give yourself some grace and do it easily. Just don't take yourself too seriously is what I'm trying to say. It's a hard process, but, slow and steady, you'll get there.
Okay. All right. Anushri, anything to add?
I think between Sanjana and Rinki, it's really hard to follow up with anything
I'm going to ask all of you, get ready.
But I think both of them kind of summarized what I would say as well. And I think importantly, what Sanjana said is, right now, I think it's really important to know it is a stressful process. It is a long process. It's not going to happen overnight. And it's not, fortunately, unfortunately, I'm not sure, but not like when you're applying for masters in India, where you just do one exam. It's one day. Of course, you prepare for it, but it's one day and then you're done. You basically get your scores and you go from there. Okay, yeah, but like in Maharashtra, you do. So I'm just thinking it's not like that. It's a months-long process, multiple steps involved. Just be patient, And I think I would go back to what we had probably talked about before is, here in the US, people really look forward to collaborations and they really want to hear from you. So if at any point you have any doubts or questions, don't hesitate to reach out to your, not just your seniors, but also to your university professionals over there. Like, they really are very responsive to your questions, and definitely advocate for yourself through that means. Don't, because as Indians, we are learned, we learn to be a little laid back and, let people come to us rather than us going to them. So just be, it's exactly the opposite here. If you're laid back, you don't ask, no one's going to come and help you. So make sure you do put yourself out there and, advocate for yourself if needs.
Okay, that's awesome. Yamini?
Yeah, I think I would probably say that for any student coming in here, learn how to maybe maintain a close set of friends or bank on your family, because apart from your coursework and everything being had, just like how Sanjana was saying, it's hard. And it's important that you hold on to your roots a little bit. Wherever you're coming from, hold on to your roots a little bit. Keep talking to your parents. Form a close network of friends that you can bank on, because if you need a shoulder to cry on, you don't have, sometimes you can't share some things with your parents because they'll get stressed, right? Because they're sitting miles away from you, and your friends are your best bet. And so many times we've kind of just held our hands and it could be work related, personal stuff. So make sure that you have that to bank on, and also make sure you have fun. Like, I did a lot of, I learned that I love to be outdoors and hike. And so, I also had to be cheap. Like, I couldn't afford to travel everywhere. So what was the cheapest thing for me to do is go out for a run. And, so find your passion apart from, being a speech pathologist. Find what else you're passionate about. That would be my advice.
Yeah, I think we're so invested in just being an SLP. We forget that we're so much more. All of us in this field are so invested in being an SLP. Yeah. Urvisha, last piece of advice. Yes.
Sorry, yeah. I'm going to keep it short. I mean, I think with the right amount of motivation, a little bit of faith, and the right building of your skill set, I think you can do anything. You will be able to do all of this, SLP plus everything else that you want to do. So just kind of try to gather that, and I think you'll be all set.
Okay, that's awesome. So
thank you to you for taking this initiative, because I'm sure all of us have got questions over the years. And I always felt like something should exist where we can just tell people, watch this, and then come back with more questions. And it's the same conversation over and over. I'm sure we all are here on a long weekend on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
We are very, we want to pay it forward. We want to support clinicians. But I think just you doing this is a great initiative. So thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much for spending time, early morning. All of you sat here for 2 hours. We thought we'll do it for an hour, but 2 hours, here we are. So I'm really glad all of you agreed to do this, because it shows that we're all such, our field is you're all ready to share the knowledge. Nobody's no, I don't want to tell anybody how to come. So you're all really open and you're ready to share. So I've asked the first 5 SLPs I thought of in the US. I just got a few recommendations and all 5 of you said yes. So I'm really glad. Thank you so much. So maybe the next time anybody is asking questions, they can watch this video and maybe comment if they have any questions. We'll see. They can email any of us. I'll add our emails and maybe our Instagram bios or something in the link description box. They can just check it out. So I hope this helps a few people out. And thank you so much for joining on a Sunday morning and a Sunday night for us. And yeah, so thank you, everybody.